Tolerance is a word that liberals love to use. It's one of their go-to words. In fact, it's more. It's an almost holy and unquestionable doctrine to these people. But tolerance isn't our friend. Tolerance is a key part of the mindset that has allowed the enemies of the West to get as far as they have. And the enemies of the West, the liberals, the internationalists, and the Marxists, apply the idea of tolerance to ensure that everything that is anti-Western or anti-white is covered by the umbrella of that overused word. A word that is often deployed to silence criticism of anti-Western social policy and the degeneracy that has engulfed Western civilization. The public has tolerance drummed into them at every opportunity and are told that tolerance is the greatest virtue one can hold. And if you see something you don't like, or something that is morally objectionable according to the values that you hold, then it's time to think about tolerance. If you see Muslims in your town centre campaigning for Sharia law, you must tolerate it. If you see grown men walking down the high street in bondage gear at a gay pride event, you must tolerate it. If you see children being taught the nonsense that they can choose their own gender, you must tolerate it. Whatever you see that might go against traditional values must be tolerated and accepted, even terrorism. For every time there is a terrorist attack, it's usually only a matter of hours before a politician is making a press statement calling for tolerance. Because, they will tell you, tolerance is what built our society. It's the foundation of our civilization. No, tolerance is a sickness. Something that is used to morally disarm those of European descent who wish to live a traditional life. In fact, the ancient Greek philosopher Aristotle is reported to have said, "Tolerance and apathy are the last virtues of a dying civilization." And to say that the West is dying is not hyperbole. It's not overstating a problem. It's just a sad truth. But doesn't tolerance build a society where everyone accepts one another? A society where everyone learns to get along? A place where different people can live in harmony and simply acknowledge their differences rather than going to war over them? Well, if anyone tells you that, they are either extremely naive or they are trying to deceive you. You see, tolerance doesn't work the way that liberals claim it does. And it doesn't work that way because it wasn't designed to. Tolerance is a one-way street that traditionalists are herded down toward their own moral demise. You see, whilst the majority, the regular hard-working folk, I'm talking about those of European descent who still hold on to family values, who still hold on to morality, they have to show tolerance to every aggressive minority, every degenerate subculture, every government-funded liberal project, and every morally repugnant lifestyle imaginable. But is that same tolerance shown to those with traditional values? No chance. Those with traditional values are mocked, derided, and publicly vilified as old-fashioned, out of touch, and even as offensive, simply for living a lifestyle that was historically the norm in Western nations just a few decades ago. And that lifestyle was more than just a way of living. It actually provided the bedrock of those Western nations. You see, the problem with tolerance is that it was never pushed upon the West in order to create a utopia where everyone valued and accepted one another. Tolerance is a tool, a weapon in fact, an ideological sledgehammer that has been used to attack the fabric of our society, and more importantly, tolerance has been used to attack social institutions that built our once cohesive society and still to this day underpin our entire Western civilization. Tolerance was never designed for everyone. And if there's one group that doesn't value tolerance, that never tolerates anything that they disagree with, if there's one group that doesn't follow the doctrine of tolerance, it's actually those who push the idea of tolerance upon others. You see, liberals, despite preaching tolerance when it comes to every degenerate or anti-Western ideal imaginable, these liberals show no tolerance whatsoever for traditional families or any displays of national or racial pride. In fact, it would be fair to say that liberals are the most intolerant people of all. Liberals are the ones that restrict free speech. They are the ones that hound people for simply holding different opinions to the opinions that they hold. They are the ones attacking events and gatherings where the opinions and ideas being espoused do not dovetail with their own. They are the ones harassing companies and venues that do business with groups they don't approve of. But worse still, liberals are always the first to attempt to get people fired from their jobs for simply holding a different set of opinions to their own. A bit of a double standard, you may think. And boy, have we seen this liberal double standard over the last few days. A young lady in Florida who goes by the name of Tiana Dalichov and works as a teacher made a few small podcasts talking about nationalism and issues related to race. And the whole liberal establishment are up in arms. She's been written about in the Huffington Post, the Daily Mail, and Time. And the story was covered by the BBC, NBC, and Fox. And liberals and Marxists applied huge pressure to the school she teaches at until they suspended her. All of this over a few podcasts where she expressed an opinion that is different to that of the liberal status quo. Where exactly is the tolerance? But she's a teacher, they would argue. She's in charge of educating the next generation. She can't be around young people with opinions like that. Well, if that's the case, what about all the communists in the teaching profession? After all, even at a conservative estimate, communists murdered in excess of 100 million people over the last century, carrying out atrocities across the globe. Yet if a teacher openly identifies as a communist, nothing is said. In fact, I can imagine they would be praised by the liberal establishment and even encouraged to talk about their views with their students. What about the bizarre-looking drag queens that have been taken into libraries to speak to very young children? Broome County Public Library in Binghamton, New York, invited drag queens to come and talk to preschoolers. And when those who found this rather disturbing complained, the library responded with the following statement, and I quote, "Throughout their history, American public libraries have been on the front lines of the fight to dispel ignorance, intolerance, and bigotry. We are following in the footsteps of the greatest of public libraries, the New York Public Library, in holding an event of this nature, and we are pleased to have received the positive feedback we have from families excited to attend the drag queen story time. Our library continues to broaden horizons and to celebrate the diversity of our culturally rich community here in the Southern Tier. We are committed to providing programming that appeals to diverse elements of our community." End quote. How quick they were to start talking about intolerance. So whilst a straight, white female who holds nationalist views was rapidly hounded out of her job as a teacher simply for holding a set of views that liberals don't agree with, anyone that suggests that maybe it's just a little bit twisted and odd for toddlers to go to drag queen story hour should shut the hell up, because that kind of intolerance cannot be accepted in a diverse and culturally rich community. And that's just one small example of exactly how tolerance is wielded as a weapon against traditionalism, against morality, and against those who stand in the defense of Western civilization. But equally, it illustrates how tolerance is never applied to traditionalists or those who wish to live in a homogeneous and family-friendly community, the kind of community that the entire Western world was built upon. But here's the interesting thing. Most people of European descent would agree with what I have just said. Most people wouldn't want a young lady sacked for holding nationalistic views, and at the same time, most normal folk would find it inappropriate for men dressed up in makeup and ladies' clothing to host Drag Queen Story Hour for toddlers. But the other problem we as a people suffer from is actually the other so-called virtue that Aristotle spoke of, and that is apathy. Most people just sit back and can't be bothered to do anything. They don't want the hassle, or they hope someone else will fix the problems. They sit and see this double standard, they see the madness around them, they see the mounting problems, but ultimately they just sit there in their armchairs staring at a variety of flickering screens. Well, neither tolerance nor apathy are virtues. Tolerance and apathy are exactly what the enemies of the West wish for Western man to embrace. Tolerance is the ability or willingness to tolerate the existence of opinions or behaviour that one dislikes or disagrees with. Apathy is a lack of interest, enthusiasm, or concern. These two so-called virtues are the mental sicknesses that have allowed Western man to sit in silence and do nothing as the vile degeneracy pushed by the enemies of the West has become ever more commonplace within Western society. To tolerate those that wish to destroy you and to do nothing about the damage they inflict upon you is not a virtue, but a sin against yourself and your people. I think it's high time we stop tolerating the filth being pushed upon us and upon our children. It's about time we learn to fight back. It's about time we learned to be as intolerant of our enemies and their twisted nonsense as they are of us.